Good morning again. Welcome back to News Center's Political Brew with John Richardson and Phil Harriman. Turn our sights south to Washington for this hour to begin. And an unusual feud that has bubbled up again. It's President Donald Trump versus the late Senator John McCain. What does Donald Trump get out of this, John? If it doesn't seem like there's a lot of political gain, even among your deepest supporters, to be casting aspersions on a dead man.
Well, I think this is a tantrum on the part of the president. I don't know that he gets anything out of it. Maybe some of the base might agree with him, but the fact is that he never got the same sort of adoration or applause that John McCain got as a war hero and as a senator who stood tall. He has never gotten that. The president hasn't, and frankly, I think he's jealous, and I think that's why he keeps going at Senator McCain to try to diminish or tarnish his image in order to raise his own, typical of what a bully does.
I don't know what the outcome is other than what we're talking about. It was an embarrassment for him to make the comments about a national public servant, a military war hero who has passed away. What is the advantage to doing this? I don't get it.
A lot of Republican office holders have said, well, we like John McCain, you shouldn't say that, but they don't really, they're kind of kid gloving, if you will.
Well, if you want to separate the man and his national hero status from the politician, there's probably some distinction there. John McCain ran on a re-election to end Obamacare. He goes back to the Senate and votes to keep it. He's arguably responsible for the Steele dossier that started the whole conversation about President Trump and his Russian collusion. So politically, yeah, I get the frustration, but the man has served our country admirably and he's passed away.
And the man has been dead for 6 months, and why would you attack him?
Well, and a little respect for his family still mourning might be nice too.
Right.
There's a lot of Democrats running for office. I mean, you can't even keep track of them all. But one of them, Beto O'Rourke, who lost a Senate race to Ted Cruz last fall, raised $6.1 million in his first day in the campaign. That's more than any other Democratic candidate so far. And remember, he had raised $80 million when he ran in Texas. A lot of money from all around the country. Do you think this is a meaningful way to keep score as this race begins to say who's got a chance to have broad appeal?
It sure does, particularly early on, Pat. The candidates who can raise the money to deploy their networks to just their travel expenses, the cost of running the campaign. If you can't afford to put fuel in the tank, the car that you're in is not going to go very far.
And for that reason, I think Beto O'Rourke will be there towards the end of this primary campaign. I think that he has distinguished himself as one of the newcomers who actually can raise the money. And as you know, money is needed for infrastructure, get on the ballot in certain states. This is important for him, and I think if he can sustain this in a way that Kamala Harris has sustained her popularity, then I think he will be there towards the end of this campaign.
Back to the State House now, the minimum wage issue, although voters settled it several years ago, voting for an increase approved by voters of $1 a year. We're at $11 now. It's going to $12 next January. But the battle's still being fought, and John, you've got small businesses saying they're having trouble keeping up. But it seems as though the efforts to slow the increase or create a training wage for teenagers failed when there were a lot more Republicans in the legislature. Any chance this changes now?
I don't think it changes at all, especially now that we have a Democratic-controlled House, Senate, and of course the governor's mansion. But I think that really what is going on as it relates to small business is not about what the wage is. It's that we are almost near full employment, and as a result, it's very difficult to find people. And that while I support the minimum wage, the fact is I think this minimum wage would have been about where it is right now just to attract, talented people to these jobs.
Did you hear him say that? Market forces drove wages up. That's brilliant, John.
And no one ever loses a job because minimum wages goes up.
But what about the concept, for example, a training wage for teenagers? We all started at jobs when we were kids and making not much money, but getting some experience.
Yep, particularly when your dad owned the grocery store, as mine did, and the minimum wage was $0.
You got dinner that night.
Yeah, I think that's the missing piece of our economy, frankly, is the next generation of workers who need to learn that you got to show up on time and say please and thank you and finish what you start and be held accountable for your performance. That worker we need, and we need to create an opportunity for people to employ them.
There's a bill making its way through the legislature that would change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. However you feel about the background of that, that seems like a hard sell for the tourist industry, saying come to Maine in the fall for Indigenous Peoples Day. It doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
No, I'm not sure Indigenous people is the right name for the holiday, but I certainly understand the sentiment around Christopher Columbus and the behavior of his adventure, so to speak. I get why it's changing. I'm not sure they've settled on the right name.
John?
I think it's time to change it. I don't know that that is the right name, but I do think bringing in the Native Americans to the conversation about what it ought to be and what should we call it is important. And I think that, in any other country, this is not a big day or even an important day. As a result, they don't harm tourism whatsoever.
It's good for car sales and tourism.
I think this is just, I think this is a holiday that is more, has been more about sales of automobiles and that sort of thing than it is about recognizing Columbus.
All right, political winners and losers this week. John, you can go first.
Johnny Isakson, a not very well-known U.S. senator who spoke up in support of John McCain and against Donald Trump. Bob Kerrey, who did the same thing, a former U.S. senator. Unfortunately, the loser this week is the Republicans in the Senate who didn't speak up and defend one of their own, and including, unfortunately, our U.S. Senator Susan Collins. We haven't heard much from her nor of other U.S. senators, Republicans, who should have spoken up for John McCain.
Winner of the week is the Milestone Recovery Program in Portland. Was featured on national news. The Today Show highlighted them and what they're doing to help people recovering from addictions. As we all know, fentanyl and opioid crisis is ravaging our communities. They're my winner this week. Loser, I have to go back to Nick Isgro, Vice Chair of the Republican Party, blanketing immigrants for the reason we have contagious diseases. That's not acceptable.
All right, Phil, John, thanks very much. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time on Political Brew. News Center's back after this.